Hi, it's Sue here. This week's podcast is an interview with the amazing Kate Swenson. I have just finished the interview and I realized there were 1,000 other things I meant to ask, but she's just so inspiring. Please make sure you read this book. It is called Forever Boy. She also has the most amazing Facebook group called Finding Cooper's Voice. It has like 1 million followers. I highly recommend you follow it. Now, lots of you have been asking me to do a podcast on non-speaking autism. And Kate's book is all about her journey and finding joy with her son Cooper, but also as a whole family, the journey they've been on. And it is the best book I have ever read as a personal account by a parent. It's amazing. Every page of the book, I literally highlighted. It was incredible. And I just do yourself a favor, make sure you read this book. It is just inspiring. Any of you who have been to my workshops and love watching the Carly video, the non-speaking young girl who shares her journey and her family journey and tears up when you watch that, will love this book. I can't tell you how good the book is. The Facebook page is fantastic too, but I really encourage you to read the book, look at the blog, and then I'd even come back and re-listen to the interview because Kate has so much to share. And obviously I didn't have time to ask her all the questions as she's got busy. She's got a family, and with the time difference, it was hard to find a time that worked for both of us. And she kindly gave me half an hour of her time. She has said she'll do another interview, and I really hope we can have a chat at another time. But if you are looking for a little bit of inspiration, I just want to share my top tips I took away from the book. The first one is take help. And I think teachers, we need to remember that too. You need to ask for help, and you teacher assistants, it's okay to ask for help. When we work with children who have complex needs, it's really important to ask for help, and parents take help too. Find what works for you. I think that is the hardest thing, that we often think there's going to be like one thing that's going to work. And as you've heard me say, strategies wear out, and not every strategy works for everybody. And I think Kate and I are so similar in that just take what works for you and what works for the child. She also says, always try one more thing. And I think I always say, if one strategy doesn't work, try something else. Most strategies only work for 1 in 10 kids. And you will hear Kate on this podcast saying that PECS did not work for Cooper. So, just keep trying to find that one more thing and find what works for you. But this one I think is so important. Celebrate everything, the smallest steps. So you'll hear Kate talk about taking Cooper to the shopping and doing those life skills. If you watch on her blog, their next goal is to get him on an aeroplane. Like, these are big goals. And I know that many of us in schools, we don't do so many life skills today. But when I talk to parents, and if you hear what Kate's goals are for Cooper, that is my experience of parents. They're looking at bigger goals. They're more life skills, getting to the shops, taking on an aeroplane, going to his brother's sport. These are such important things. And I guess recently on my Facebook, I was sharing about how important cooking is and how much I love it. And a teacher said she's been told she can't do cooking. Well, I find that really frustrating. So I think we should be able to teach these skills. These are so important, and because they take so long to teach, we need to begin with the end in mind. And personally, I think you can teach maths, science, you can teach everything through cooking. But anyway, but the other thing is that Kate is a big believer in choose joy. And her book is a very emotional journey. I cried in bits, my heart ached in bits. But at the end of the book, she's all about finding the joy. And make sure you listen to the end of the podcast when I ask her what's bringing her joy at the moment. It's just so inspirational. So grab a cuppa, sit down and listen to this podcast, or if you're out on a walk, I hope you enjoy it. But thank you everyone for being listeners, and make sure you buy Forever Boy. Watch out for my email, because Kate has offered to do a signed copy as a prize for somebody. So check out my emails that go with the podcast so that you could be in the draw to win a signed copy of the book. Part of me doesn't want to share it. I want to keep it. I'm just a huge fan. I had a fangirl moment. I was so excited when she said yes to this podcast. And I just feel truly blessed that we have Kate in this world to share her insights and understandings and her courage to share her amazing journey with her beautiful boy, Cooper. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Sue Larkey podcast. As I always say, you have to embrace difference to make a difference. Let's dive into today's podcast. I am so excited to have Kate on our podcast today. Kate has written the most fantastic book, called Forever Boy. So welcome, Kate. Congratulations on the book. I can't believe that it's number 42 on USA Today.
Yes, it did really well. And Amazon even picked it as the best nonfiction, which is really great for a book about a disability because that doesn't always happen.
No. And I mean, I don't want to have any spoilers for people today. My passion is after this podcast, everyone reads it because I just think every page I turned, it reminded me of a child or a family I knew. And I just found it actually reinvigorated me about what is possible with our darlings. So can you tell us a little bit about your beautiful Cooper?
Yeah, so today Cooper's 11. He just started 6th grade, which here that's middle school. So he is definitely in that in-between tween stage. He is thriving. You know, his diagnosis is still, if you look on the piece of paper in my drawer, it's severe nonverbal level 3 autism, but that doesn't really define him. He's happy and smart and funny and social and living his best life. And, I feel just really blessed to be able to be like his tour guide on this wacky journey, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that's what comes through in the book, that it has been a wacky journey and there's been ups and downs and even like the struggle to get a diagnosis, which in Australia now because of COVID, so many of our families are on waiting lists and going through that pain and anguish of waiting to know what's next and what's happening. And that's where I think the book will be really helpful for families and teachers. But why did you write the book? Tell us why you wrote it.
Well, so I've been blogging about autism in Cooper since before he was diagnosed. So when he was 2, I started a blog because I wanted a place to pour out my heart and just be like, I'm scared. My son's not babbling. I'm nervous. I'm worried, and have a place to kind of start my own space of figuring out what was going on. Flash forward after a lot of pieces going viral and really kind of figuring out my voice and how I wanted to share autism, I was approached by an agent and asked to put my blogs together for a book, but it became so much more than that. It really became just kind of a guidebook of a little boy and a family who's figuring out autism and how to thrive throughout this confusing time. And I love how it turned out. I feel like so when I went to the library in the bookstore when Cooper was diagnosed, the books were clinical. And it wasn't about real children. It was, if that makes sense, it was very clinical.
Totally.
And I think it was hard for me to understand that this could be our autism. So now I've heard from people that my book, it just makes it real and it paints a picture and it's easier to understand.
Totally. And for me, because I'll be honest, I'd stopped reading autism books people recommended because I just, I've taught over 3,000 children, probably 200 non-speaking, and I just couldn't relate to so many of the books. They just didn't resonate with my journey as a teacher and the families that I had a strong connection to. Whereas your book, every page, I was like, oh, that's Daniel, that's Joshua, that's Ben, and, that's Victoria. And I was just like, every page I turned. But not only that, the parents, because I was very lucky in my early autism career. I worked at an autism school and we were allowed to do home visits then. Things have changed a little bit. And they were the most powerful thing, to go to a family, sit down, have a cup of coffee, watch the child in their own environment, so seeing Cooper doing, like, I love on your Finding Cooper's Voice Facebook page, seeing the videos of Cooper, because he reminds me of some of my students, like when he puts all his DVD cases, or there was one where he was lighting up the chairs, and one of my little girls, Jessica, when I went to her house, she had completely moved her brothers in her bedroom, like just swapped them over.
Fascinating.
Who knows? Who knows why? Her mum and I are sitting there going, Jeanette's
never know why.
Never.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to share. So here's my thought on that. It's that you can find out all the hard parts about autism. You could, right now, you could search it. You could find out every hard part, every sad prediction, everything. And that's what I found when my son was diagnosed. And I decided years ago, there's enough negative out there. I'm going to share the positives and beautiful parts of this diagnosis, so that when the mom has their child diagnosed and they Google it, they see this like blonde-haired boy with these beautiful cheeks doing something adorable and think, this is going to be okay, because it is going to be okay.
Yeah. I'm interested. Why did you call it Forever Boy, the book?
Yeah, so that's interesting, because I've actually honestly gotten nothing negative about the book, but I've had a couple people think, ask me if I was being offensive towards him, if I was infantizing him. And the answer is no, that is not it at all. I feel like I get forever to figure out, to advocate, to help, to change the world. And I get to do it alongside him. And we get to go through this together. Where with other children, it's a race against time. It's like, okay, they're 18, they're gone. I'm like, we're going to do some great, amazing things for the duration of his life, my life, I guess. So that's where it came from.
Yeah. And I think anyone who reads the book would get that. You would never question that title if you've read the book and seen your passion and the finding the joy. And because you have 3 other kids, so you know how different the journey is for each child. And I guess for me, that's why I enjoyed in the last chapter where you actually said no one knows what their child's future is, because teachers will often ask me that, what's this child's future? And I'm like, I don't know my 3 kids' future. How can I know this child's future? But I know, I always think when I'm with a child, I know what I can do this year while I have them and what a difference I can make, and, make that connection. And it might take me 6 months to make a deep connection with a child, and allowing that time. And that's okay, just those make it, because for example, for Cooper going into 6th grade, what's the best advice? How do we get him into enjoying 6th grade in a routine? What things are important?
Well, so we went to the school multiple times over the summer because I wanted him. He's at a new school this year, a new building, new teacher, and I'm terrified. I have scary memories of middle school, junior high. The bullying and all that stuff. He is such a happy-go-lucky kid. He's ready 10 minutes before the bus comes. For him, he does really well with his, he needs his speech device. He needs, he loves like lists of what's going to be happening. He loves calendars and timelines, and he doesn't want to be surprised. He wants to know. So he does really well with his routine and his schedule, and he loves working towards things. So like we always have a goal that we're working towards. It could be small. It could be a $3 movie off eBay. It could be a trip to the zoo, but we're always working towards something. And all this stuff for parents of newly diagnosed kids, it took years for me to figure this out, really what makes them tick. But once you do, it's such a relief.
So one of my things I say at my workshops is if you can find one strategy, it can make the world of difference to a child. But most strategies only work for 1 in 10 kids. So you've just got to find that one strategy. And once you've found that one strategy, like the writing.
Hold on 1 second. I don't want to interrupt you, but if you want to say hi. Sorry, I'm going to go in the other room.
No, that's all right. Hi,
Cooper. Can you go ask Dad? Okay. Sorry.
No, don't. I'm happy for you to help him whatever he needs. I don't want him to be frustrated if we're ruining a routine or something.
Oh gosh, no! He wants me to like Google a picture or something. He can go ask his dad.
I love it.
Okay,
I love it. It's okay. So you said like now he gets on the bus, but it wasn't always like that, was it? He wouldn't always just jump on the bus and go.
No, and I tell parents all the time, if you're in that really hard part where you haven't figured out the day program, whether it's school or therapy, that is just a heartbreaking time because you want your child to be happy. And, we used to have, when the bus would pull up, Cooper would start, being really aggressive towards me, towards himself, towards others. He would run. And then we had years where I would drive him, and I was just thinking about this, how I'd go to open the car door and of our SUV, and he would go to the back so I couldn't reach him. So I'd go to the back and then he'd run to the front and I wouldn't be able to get him out of the car. Oh, the stressful times. But now he loves it and I am so thankful.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think made a difference for him in that way? Like to get a child who was doing that? Because I've had kids who do that on the bus, like when the bus used to come into our special school, children who do the runner. One of my boys helped me lose a few kilos. So I was very happy with that.
Cooper has just really grown into himself. I think for him, so our journey was, we went to kindergarten. We did a special education program in kindergarten, and not to spoil the book, but it did not work out. And we ended up taking him home and doing therapy for 3 years. And I think he got bored in that. Cooper's a smart boy and he wanted to learn and he wanted to be with his peers. So being isolated in a therapy setting was great for a while, but it lost its luster. So going back to school, he's really social. So he loves being with other kids and, going on the playground and going out for lunch and that sort of thing. So it was finding something he loved.
Yeah, totally. And that was his way of communicating. He didn't want to be there. And that's what I always say, like, he was letting you know in the best way he could. All behavior serves a purpose, but I like. Yeah, that was his only way of communicating, And I mean, I love in the book where you sort of say you'd love to climb in his brain. Well, that's how I say it. I'd love to climb in their brain and just have a quick look around and just try and work out what the community. Because I'm sure you're like me that when I work with children and non-speaking, I'm always trying to theorize what they're trying to communicate in that situation in the car or the bus. Or one of my boys used to do a runner. Actually, it turned out he had high sensitive to sound and he could hear holes in pipes. So he was running to people's houses who had holes in their like hot water systems and things like that.
Oh my gosh.
I know. But he ended up, it's really good. He ended up working for a plumber because he could find where the hole was. And the plumber didn't have to rip up all the piping because he could hear where the hole was. But the year I was teaching him, I did a lot of running. Anyway, but he had no way of communicating that to me. So I'm always like, what is the child thinking? I just loved, because I'm theorizing and guessing, and it is a guess sometimes. And that's why you've just, like you sort of said, sometimes strategies wear out. Sometimes it's about finding that right strategy. And just trying to, once he's happy, like looking back in hindsight, that need for social, but you just don't know. You've just got to keep trying things. And my favorite chapter of the book's the last chapter, Kate, where
that's mine too.
Yeah, I just loved it. I was sort of sad the book was over, to tell you the truth, because I was loving it so much. But I thought the last chapter had pretty much it just had all the things that resonate with me, like that. Keep trying one more thing, always looking for one more things. That loving push, like you're saying, always having that goal. So what's your goal at the moment for Cooper? What's he working towards?
So we have some big goals. So, our dream is for him to be able to go on an airplane. He wants to go see whales at the ocean. He wants to do things, but we're just terrified to do the airplane thing. Cause that involves sitting and waiting and, wearing headphones if we're going to blare our iPad, and all goals that we have. So, flying on an airplane, eating in a restaurant, and going to his brother's sporting events. And they all involve the same elements, right?
Yeah.
The sitting, the waiting. And he has accomplished so many goals. I mean, he's just shattering goals, but those are still the moving targets that we're working towards. And
I'm sort of excited to hear those goals, because I always think begin with the end in mind. So they're really good lifelong goals. If we can get him on a plane, that will be just his first trip. There'll be many more after that, And I had a little boy who, I must say, I don't know if your airport is, but I had a little boy whose family wanted to take him back to Vietnam to see their relatives. That's a long flight from Australia. And I think we spent maybe 2 years on that goal. And, it was just going to the airport, going through security, desensitized, watching planes, it was every week we went to the airport. And I must say, in the end, the airport staff were amazing with us. They gave us free parking. They let us just let him go and watch. They let him get on a plane a few times and off, And I think I liked in your final chapter where you said, accept help.
Oh, yeah.
A big goal like going on a plane, you're going to need some help from the airports, from different people along the way,
Well, I like how you just said the big goals, and this is where it can be so, intimidating and exhausting for a parent. There's so many little parts that go into a goal that a neurotypical family would never think about because their kids just do it. I remember one of our huge goals was walking through a store, not writing in the cart. I mean, that took years. And then we had years where we couldn't go because he would run and he would flop to the ground and he would take things off shelves and just, really, really kind of out of control behavior. So you have to practice. You go and you practice walking. You literally go in for 5 minutes and then you leave. And you just kind of keep building. And that can be overwhelming and daunting, right? But I always just encourage parents to break it down into tiny little steps. What are they to get to this huge monster goal? It's little things.
Yeah, totally. And the same, I used to take kids to the store and one of my kids would just get one thing and we would leave, or just that. But that does take time. And in a busy family, I know that's not always possible. But I always say, just tiny steps. And sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I'm sure you've seen that with Coops, that it's not always all up,
Well, and I'll say, so even for that, our first step was being safe in the car. So before we could even get to the store, we had car rides were really dangerous for a lot of years with throwing and rocking and all that. So we had to practice the car. Then parking lots were really dangerous. Cooper would bolt from the car and actually run towards traffic. So we had to work on that. So you can see how it can take years. Yeah. And he's 11 now, and we just have our first successful trips to the one certain grocery store after horseback riding, and it took 8 years, and it's still a sweet victory. It's not any less sweet because it took so long.
No, and that's where I'd really encourage people to watch your Facebook, join your Facebook group, because I think all those little victories on there are just a delight to watch. And I just, I love seeing Cooper in the grocery store. He reminded me of one of my beautiful students. I take my class shopping. Can you imagine? I had a class of 8 kids like Cooper, taking them grocery shopping.
Oh, I love it.
And then, one didn't like the doors that at the start, even those electric doors that open and close. He was scared of them. I mean, no home has those electric doors. I think it took us a month to get him just through the doors of that, because he was obviously scared of them shutting on him, so he would drop to the ground. And then you have all the lovely public who have all their lovely opinions that they share with you, and you're just trying to support a child, and some people's opinions aren't supportive. I'm sure you've met those people. And but I remember anyway, luckily this boy loved it. We have a biscuit called Tim Tams in Australia, which are like a chocolate biscuit. So luckily the store kindly moved the Tim Tams closer to the front for me so he could see them, because some of our children don't have object permanence. So he had no concept, if he went through those doors, that his Tim Tams would be there, So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's so cute. I've got a couple of quick questions from my beautiful Facebook community that I will see if you can help with these. So Carla has a 5-year-old student with limited speech, and he's using screaming, biting, pinching to communicate. She wants to know how to help him express his needs in a functional way. So
I remember what we worked on. We never had the pinching or the biting, but we did have the screaming. And we worked on getting attention nicely. So Cooper still does this today. So we worked on getting someone's attention by tapping them on the shoulder, and he'll do it to me still to this day. I mean, again, that took a long time, but so we would just redirect. So when he would scream, I would say, "Do you want something from mom?" He'd look at me and then he'd be like, "Say it nicely." And it eventually started working because those behaviors can be jarring and they're especially hard out in public.
Yeah. And I love the tapping on the shoulder or arm. I think that's such a, because that you can do that with you when you're 20 or whether you're 2. Because some people like there's tapping on the leg. You can't do that as a teenager. So I always think begin with the end in mind, teaching a child to tap on the arm. And I think tapping on the arm can be used for so many things. I've finished, I've had a nap, like that's such a good one to start with. I would be the same, starting with something functional like that.
And I would also encourage as a teacher to really start tracking what the screaming, the child wants from the screaming. Like, is it a snack? Is it to go to the bathroom? Is it whatever? And I'm a huge fan of data. Like if you just start, I learned so many things by slowing down and looking at what he was actually communicating. And then you can really eliminate a lot of things that way.
Yeah. And I mean, people think but if a child bites me, I call that a love bite because they don't bite random people. Like they bite someone who they have a connection with and they want to communicate something with. So I always think that biting is normally you didn't hear me the first time. They're escalating. They're like, you didn't hear me. So I'm now going to have to bite you to make sure. So if we can really do that data, it's the only way. And remember, I think too, neurotypical children, often something like biting is just over one thing. But if you can't communicate, biting can be over 3 or 4 different types of communication, not always like, because some people are off just looking for one sort of communication. But in my experience, a child might bite for 4 or 5 reasons. So, yeah. And I suspect I would say too that children always replace one behavior with another. So there is no 0. So you might stop him biting and he starts screaming, but hopefully we can replace it with that tapping. So that's what we're aiming for, the tap. So we still might get the odd scream or bite, but we're aiming for that tapping. And if everyone's consistent, then I think it sounds like that's what you really got going, that consistency for Cooper.
And that took years for us too. I mean, because you have to get consistent across, school, grandparents, dad, mom. You have to get consistent across the board. And, our kids are sneaky and they want to take the path of least resistance. So like for us, it was his communication device was the one that we had to be really consistent with because we knew he could communicate with it. But Grandma just knew he wanted a cookie. And I just knew that he just needed, it's like, no, he needs to use his device because not everyone can understand Cooper.
100%. And that's what I find hardest with some of my young children. The parents know what the child wants, but I'm like, but that's not going to work when they get to school. And that's my first student, Michael, who I taught, who was non-speaking. His nonna understood his noises. He used to make little squeaky noises, but I had a class of 25 children. I would miss those sounds. So I needed him to, I call it motivate to communicate. I needed to motivate him to communicate with functional communication, not behavior and noises, and getting the grandparents to ensure that he uses that. But looking on Facebook, he still uses a range of communication like the signing, the iPad. Yeah. What?
With me, he's mostly verbal. So Cooper and I have always worked on verbal communication, whether that sounds or just sounds in general or words. So with me, he's mostly verbal. Cooper has amazing communication. He has like probably 10 signs that he can do. He's fluent with his speech device, his talker. So he uses that at school. I thought before I understood non-speaking, nonverbal, I'm like, we'll never understand him. Well, I understand everything because I'm his mom.
Correct.
So he has pretty severe apraxia. So his D's come out as ah. So I can tell you the difference between donut, dad, and diesel train, and they are all ah.
Yeah. Look, I'm the same, and I always sort of forget other people don't understand the child, but I think when you work with a lot of children with autism, you actually start to understand the noises, even the movements, like a little flap or a little shoulder raise. I'll be like, oh, okay, the child's worried about something. Like you get very good at observing and knowing. And sometimes I find that hard to explain to other people because it's so clear to me what the child
I know.
And you're like, oh, no, that they want that. And people go to me, how do you know that? Like I'll walk into a classroom and know pretty quickly, or I'll have a child come and sit on me, and people are like, you've only just walked in. That child doesn't normally sit on people. I'm like, but I understand that child and they know. And so then I find it hard sometimes to translate that for other people, what I've done, because sometimes it's just that I've understood that child's subtle communication. Yeah. And I noticed, because one of my boys, Ben, was like that Cooper likes you to write down the words when he's...
Yeah, we write everything.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
How long's he like that? When did that start?
I would say we've been doing that for a couple of years. And so PECS, the picture exchange system, the picture of the cup, that never really worked for Cooper, because he didn't realize that, I'm going to hold up a coffee cup and another cup, that those aren't Cooper's cups. So unless I took pictures of everything, it never really worked for him. And he would crumple them up and hide them under the fridge. And PECS was really frustrating for him. But he loved letters. So like, he learned to read simple things pretty easy. So I would just make lists. That would be our version of PECS. So like on a Saturday morning, I'd be like, we're going to get dressed. We're going to have breakfast. We're going to brush teeth. We're going to go for a walk. And like, we would check it off, and it provided him this comfort. So we still do that now in a simpler way, because we don't need lists really anymore, but he likes to like have that to share, the written words.
Yeah. And one of my little boys, Ben, was exactly like that. And he very much like Cooper, where he'd get frustrated that I didn't write exactly the words he wanted. Like, they're very clear. And I think the not liking the visuals, I've seen that so many times with my non-speaking children who are actually literate. So he could read it, if they can read and write, but they can't communicate that. They're my children who don't like the visuals. And I always sort of joke, because I've spent hours making visuals and children post them or hide them or put them in the bin. And they're normally my children who end up being very good readers and actually quite literate, but had no way of letting me know. So...
Well, and another reason why I started doing it too, for parents that are listening, is I had this like sad moment where I was like, let's just say we had went to the zoo over the weekend, or we had a birthday party or something. And Cooper went to school on Monday, and I was like, he can't tell them. Like, he had this like great weekend, like, and it made me so sad, because there's so much, he has so much fun in his life. So I thought of it as a way he could give his teacher, tell her, and then she could ask him questions. So then she would send things home like, the principal stopped by to say hi today. We sang this song. So then I could be like, hey, buddy, did you see Principal Leshik today? And he's like, yeah. I want him to be able to have two-way communication. And when he's not verbally able to do it, that kind of sealed the deal for me.
Yeah, totally. In fact, I just met a fantastic teacher yesterday who sends home all the photos of what the kids have been doing to the parents every day to create that communication. And that's the advantage of devices today. We can do that, we can share that so easily. Whereas, dare I say, when I started teaching, you'd sort of have to print out the photos, come back, and then, it was 6 weeks ago, that instant, using that effectively. Now, I'm conscious of your time and how you've got your family to look after. But I guess what I love about the book and your Facebook, it's all about finding the joy. And it's funny, because my thing for this year, I always have a word, was joy, and asking people what brings them joy. That's like my question I ask all my friends at the moment. So what's bringing you joy at the moment, Kate?
What's bringing me joy? My kids being back in school. Honestly. Oh my goodness. One other thing is I started a nonprofit during COVID. It's called the More Than Project, and our sole purpose is helping moms. And next weekend, we're having 100 moms, 100 special needs moms, going to a camp, and we're having a weekend of respite and relaxation, and we're going to have drinks and eat s'mores. And I have this mantra that and this is in the book, once you make it through, whatever that is to you, help others, because others they may not have anyone to help them through. And so I'm just kind of pouring myself back into the moms in the community.
Yeah. And I sort of have the same mantra in a different way, because I feel like I'm doing that for teachers and teacher assistants. Like I've had 30 years of working with kids, and I want to give that knowledge back, so that for me as a teacher, when I started, I felt like I was just dealing with behavior and not a lot of teaching. And I don't want any teachers to get to the end of the day and just sort of have a checklist of behavior instead of actually helping that child thrive, go from surviving to thriving. And accept that there'll be good and bad days. It's not all going to be up, but I'm so excited. You've got 100 mums going away. I would love to be there serving the drinks. I want to come and be on the drinks and making smalls with you. That is so special.
So excited. And the nature of the mom with a child with disability is they're pretty isolated. They're often not able to work because there's no one to care for the child. There's not a plethora of babysitters. There's so many, and they're always fighting. I mean, whether it's a subtle push and pull of trying to get something or whatever, but it's a hard road sometimes, and we're going to just spoil these moms for 2 days and they can get 2 full nights of sleep. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Oh, this is amazing. Will you put some photos on Facebook for us all to see? Oh, I'm Absolutely. So thrilled. But I also think there's something nice about connecting and knowing you're not isolated. And that's one of the problems, like Australia, like America, we're a big country. I have families in regional areas that are very isolated, not just from other parents, but from services, having occupational therapists and speech therapists. So I'm sort of hoping, Kate, that any of those people who are feeling isolated today, wherever they are in their journey, that listening to this podcast will just reinvigorate them what is possible. And I really just want them all to read your book. Like, just make sure they get the book. They will find, I think, your book's about finding joy. I found so much joy in your book. And I have no doubt if every teacher and parent and carer and, psychologist, whoever read this book, I think they would find joy and also support families to find that joy too. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah. And thank you for writing the book. Amazing. Amazing. So really appreciate it. I hope you've got some great tips and strategies to make a difference. Remember, strategies wear out and not every strategy works for everybody. If you're ready to dive in deeper to more strategies and ideas to make a difference, I'd highly recommend you consider Dr. Tony Atwood or my online courses. For more information, visit my website www.sulaki.com.au.